All right, so welcome everybody. This is going to be our YouTube podcast, I guess. Really, we're going to be doing this once a week from now on. We have We have a podcast that we do two times a week, Mondays and Fridays, and we've done animated critics for a while, but we had to cut back on that because the workload was just too much for it, and people really wanted to see more of it. So this is the best way that we can do it.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be our little truncated version of our normal podcast. We'll be getting these out to you midweek, and they'll be available on our YouTube channel. So check these out. Let's jump into the first topic, though, and that's Transformers 4. I mean, they said Michael Bay wasn't going to return to this, and now it looks like he's going to be back in the director's chair. No word yet on Shia LaBeouf or any of the other returning cast members, but I don't know. I mean, just a few months ago, he said he was really all done with this, and now we have him back.
Yeah, he was moving on to other projects, wasn't he? He was literally trying to do a bunch of other movies possibly, and saying no, he's just absolutely not going to do this, and all of a sudden here it is, just like lickety split, and it just took a day.
No, it took $1 billion gross is what it took. I mean, that's all it took, and
he probably got his final check right from the last one. It's like, oh, this is why I made that.
Exactly. And honestly, this is his bread and butter right now. This is the biggest thing he's got going for it. These are mammoth movies. It makes sense that he wants to be involved with these huge productions. I mean, Paramount's going to give him as much money as he wants for these next movies. Yeah. The only problem is that I thought he was going to make this little film called Pain and Gain about a steroid ring in Florida, a crime thriller.
A lot about.
Yeah, and he was in talks with Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, to be in it, and I would love to see a collaboration between Dwayne Johnson and Michael Bay. Unfortunately, that's going to be pushed back a little bit, and we are going to get a Transformers 4 for better or worse.
Possibly for worse.
Yes, most likely.
Do you think Shia LaBeouf comes back at this point? Now since Michael Bay's returning?
Does it matter anymore? I mean, who's really in this? The Transformers is the spectacle at this point, and I think they should go after Jason Statham. I think that's actually a decent idea.
Come to life.
I'm not against it at this point.
I don't know. I don't really care.
Let's move on and talk about Quantum of Solace. Daniel Craig just came out today and said that he didn't come out today, but he came out saying that the script for Quantum of Solace was, in his words, fucked, and that he and the director Mark Foster had to work after a writer's strike prohibited Paul Haggis and the original writers from working on the script any further. They did a little bit of touch up. Don't you think it's evident on why this movie is so bad?
Yeah, I mean, you had said that possibly like Paul Haggis might have something to say about this, and I would only think that he would have good things to say about this. If I were him, I'd be like, yeah, Daniel Craig wrote that piece of shit for sure. It wasn't me.
It's a little arrogant, don't you think, though, when stars come out and say that they wrote something, because obviously he may have contributed here and there or trimmed, but I have a hard time believing that he constructed the scenes.
But who? You mean? Yeah, obviously. I mean, while he was lying on the beach, like working his body for the scenes in the movie, so that he could look good. Yeah. I don't know. Was he really working on the movie? Probably not.
And isn't this another case where we see people distance themselves when it's a bomb? If this had been a hit or has been well received as Casino Royale,
he's not distancing himself though, is he? He's really kind of bringing himself back to it, or putting himself in the limelight for it. I don't. Almost taking the blame in a way.
I guess he could be dissing Cowboys and Aliens, which, somewhat deserves it. So
I wouldn't be surprised if we found out he wrote that as well. So.
Very true. Very true. Let's move on and talk about another Daniel Craig movie that's going to be coming out, and that's The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. You showed me an 8-minute-long special trailer that David Fincher has concocted for the internet audiences, and I gotta say, it's quite mesmerizing.
Yeah, after all the crap that we've said about Daniel Craig not being able to find roles that are good, he finally struck gold with this one, I think. But it's not too far off from the roles that he's already been playing. It's just finally a movie with that type of role. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, what was the haunted house one?
Dreamhouse.
Yeah, Dreamhouse. This almost he seems very similar. At least in that kind of a. This is a David Fincher movie, so obviously far better put together film, but it's kind of it's more of a darker film, and he does kind of choose darker films, so finally pick something off. I don't know.
Well, this 8-minute trailer we'll have posted in its entirety at moviemavericks.com, where you can check it out. It is quite intriguing. I think that it runs a bit too long. I think it's a little bit too much of a good thing.
It's almost like watching a movie.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a very almost literal adaptation from the book. I'm sure it's going to keep a lot of fans happy, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, well, they said they changed one big thing apparently, but it's something that might not really be that big, but something that they said didn't make sense to them in the book. It made more sense being another way, which I don't mind. You know, things change sometimes necessarily from a book to a movie.
The biggest one that I can remember, or the one that caused the biggest brouhaha, was when the Sidney Pollack changed the ending to The Firm from the John Grisham novel, and
Hmm.
made it slightly different, a little bit more cinematic in his words. That caught a lot of fire, but that didn't stop that film from going on to be a
Yeah.
total box office hit. And I think this isn't going to do Da Vinci Code type numbers, but I think that the popularity the books have gained, the role that Fincher's on, Daniel Craig doesn't hurt to have in the movie at this point. I think this is going to be an absolute smash. And these first 8 minutes, or whatever these 8 minutes are enticing.
Yeah.
It's a very enticing thing. I think that they should be making this a little bit more readily available than they have been thus far.
I agree. Let's move on. Talk sequels. I mean, there's what, four sequels now that have been announced. Well, one possibly, but Grown Ups 2, which
Yep.
makes a lot of sense, really, because I believe that is the highest grossing Adam Sandler movie
$270 million in the bank. I mean, worldwide,
worldwide. Yeah,
huge. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely big, huge thing. Lincoln Lawyer. They're gonna make a sequel to that,
I'm
which I know
glad. I
you
like that.
love. The Lincoln Lawyer. They were doing a TV show. They're already doing a TV show over at ABC for it.
Yeah,
They
the
want to do
plans are
so
still to do
now.
that as well.
Yeah, and now they're gonna do a movie as well, so that's obviously a hot property.
Hmm.
But we got Journey 3, uh, which I guess makes sense. We don't know how well Journey 2 is gonna do,
Apparently, they
but
liked it though.
well, the family movies like that, I don't know. With Spy Kids, they tend to do well in the middle hump area, but they fall off real fast apparently.
Yep. Yep.
So we'll see if it can keep up with the third one, but they're gonna do it. And Robin Williams is talking about the possibility of Birdcage 2, and that they're somehow working on a story for it.
The most surprising, wouldn't you say? I mean, was anybody really
I don't
clamoring
really
for a
understand
Birdcage sequel
what the
16 years
sequel would
after?
be. Yeah,
Well, there
was
was
there like
there is a sequel to the original comedy film from it's always been a knockoff, a movie called the Cage Folly, the Birdcage, and there was a
right?
Birdcage 2 in France back in the mid 80s. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's a natural progression for them to go back and do it. But the thing is, isn't Robin Williams shtick tired at this point? Does anybody really think that they need a Birdcage 2? I mean, that's got to be an MGM property. So
Well,
maybe
you're
Sony's
right.
thinking
I mean, where's RV2? That's what
yeah, exactly.
personally
Or
want.
Mrs. Doubtfire too. I mean, that should have been
He
the
said no. There's not going to be a Mrs. Doubtfire 2.
yeah, because the Birdcage is a much better property. Let me tell you. What I am excited about is that
Oh,
the Lion King, the Lincoln Lawyer is coming out as a
yeah.
sequel because the first one made about $85 million worldwide, which doesn't sound that great, but it had a very small budget. It did pretty well on DVD sales, well enough for them to do a TV show. And I think that this is really Matthew McConaughey's signature role. He tried the action adventure thing with Sahara, it didn't really work out. He's
I like
built to play
Sahara
a lawyer.
though.
I like Sahara too. It just didn't take off, but he was really made to play a lawyer. Look at Time to Kill, and I think Lincoln Lawyer is an even better movie. It goes on my top 5 best of the year, and I welcome a sequel.
Yeah, well, I'm really looking forward to Grown Ups too myself. I really like that first one. I think and you, we were perhaps the only people on the planet to actually enjoy that movie. But
I think you're right. I
I
think you're
really
right.
wanted a sequel to that for those guys, those group of guys. I liked a lot. It didn't have to be necessarily a sequel to that, but just get all of them back to a movie again. I'm glad that it's Grown Ups too.
I propose this question to you. Do you think that we get a sequel to Grown Ups 2 because Adam Sandler might be in a fear mode since Jack and Jill didn't break that $100 million barrier?
Yeah, sure. Like a return to form. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, sure, absolutely. But doesn't that make sense? Do one for them, do one for you.
I just think that if
So,
Jack and Jill had been a little bit more received, we wouldn't have gotten this. Although he is such good friends, Sandler that is such good friends with
uh
Chris Rock and Kevin James and those guys that it makes sense that he wants to surround them himself with them. So I welcome a sequel to most of these movies, but the most troubling to me is The Birdcage. Although Journey 3 seems a little bit uncalled for when we haven't seen anything from Journey 2
well,
yet.
what's
But the
it?
executives apparently are
Uh,
very pleased with what they've seen, and
uh,
they think they might have a franchise in their hands. So hey, help them out if you can. I always liked Journey 1 because it was kind of before Avatar. It was the first good-looking 3D movie. Before Avatar kind of came out and blew everything
yeah,
away.
yeah. It was really the first kind of foray into the new 3D.
Yeah, the live action.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, and it looked good, so can't say anything about it. They're family action adventure movies. The Rock is, a good person to put into one of those, just because he's so accessible, really, to an older audience and a younger audience as well.
Hey, I got to give The Rock a little bit
But
more credit than I have been giving him. I do think that he pulls
mhm.
off these kids' movies with a little bit more professionalism and charm than
His
even, say,
problem.
Schwarzenegger, really, I
Oh
have to
yeah,
say.
yeah, absolutely. That's why I say he's far more accessible. Like little
Yeah,
kids can understand him. And not be
it
afraid of
comes
him.
right.
uh,
Exactly.
but yeah. So he seems more like a smoother, likable kind of a guy to be able to
Right.
pull that off. He just has to be careful he doesn't just do those, which he seems to be, and that happens a lot. I mean, look at Eddie Murphy. It seems to be very easy for these guys to fall into this, and then they don't want to do anything else.
And they get stuck in this lane. We saw Dwayne Johnson pull himself out of this a little bit with Faster and with Fast Five, but it seems that he might be slipping back into this a little bit. But if Michael Bay
Hmm.
can get Transformers 4 over with and get in with Johnson and make that Pain and Gain, that is the movie. I'm telling you, that's going to be a great flick. It's going to be a small budget
Well,
movie,
could he?
only $20 million
Do you think that
apparently.
it's even possible that he just produces it at this point?
Yeah, it's very possible. Michael Bay has been an executive producer for a lot of things.
Hmm.
Platinum Dunes, I believe
Yeah.
he has. With the horror movies that came out, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. He was the executive producer on those. I would like to see him actually step behind the camera again. You and I actually like Michael Bay far more than most of our colleagues do, but particularly you and I like his bomb. I mean, you and I like The Island, his lowest grossing
I really
film.
like the island. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's one of his strongest films. And speaking of today is Pearl Harbor Day, and I would suggest anyone go back and take a look at Pearl Harbor the movie. It has zero historical authenticity, but hey, it's a good movie, and it's Pearl Harbor Day. Do something for the veterans. Watch Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
I think that
I would
wraps it up today.
agree.
You wanna?
Yeah, we're done. I mean, go to the website, moviemavericks.com. Check out podcasts. Like I said, we do 2 a week, Mondays and Fridays. If you have an iPod or an
iPad, any
iPad
of
or
that
an
kind of
iPhone,
stuff.
whatever, you can definitely check out Stitcher. We're on there for our podcast, and a bunch of stuff's on there, really. But visit the site. Check out our reviews. We're going to be doing next year. We're going to be relaunching the site. It's going to be pretty exciting.
Yep. Also,
Uh,
get the Facebook app and I'm sorry, the iPhone
mhm.
app. We're
iPhone
on
app.
Facebook and we're on Twitter, but
Yes.
also get the iPhone app and the Android app for the Movie Mavericks. It's all free.
Hmm.
Stay up to date with the latest reviews or interviews. We have an interview right now on there with David Zuckerman. Anyone out there that's a fan of Wilfred or Family Guy, American Dad, he's one of the creators, one of the head writers, showrunners. Very interesting, funny guy. We had the opportunity to speak with him, and we have that posted for our fans out there on MovieMavericks.com. Check us out. Until
Yeah.
then, thank you for joining us.